This man began his day with a bottle of champagne costing several $1,000s and consuming an insane amount of illegal substances. He then engaged in schemes so audacious they left even FBI agents in shock. He gained worldwide fame after the release of the 2013 blockbuster The Wolf of Wall Street. Scorsese and DiCaprio managed to vividly portray the wild lifestyle of Jordan Belfort and perfectly captured the spirit of the time. However, the film barely touches on the nature of Belfort's schemes that ultimately led to his imprisonment. In this video, I won't recount the well-known moments from Belfort's life already depicted in the film. Instead, I'll delve into what was either not shown at all or depicted inaccurately, and explain in simple terms the securities fraud that ultimately led to Jordan Belfort's incarceration. The film begins with the future Wolf getting a job at a Wall Street brokerage firm at the age of 22. In reality, Belfort entered the world of investments only at 25. Before that, he lived what he described as a dog's life, where a year felt like 7. By the way, in real life, Belfort gave himself the nickname The Wolf while he was in prison, writing a book about his exploits. No one actually called him that during his wild youth. Belfort studied dentistry in college but dropped out after the dean said that the golden age of dentistry had passed and that the profession rarely made anyone rich, though it guaranteed a comfortable life. An interesting fact about Belfort's biography is that before college, at the age of 17, he sold ice cream and shell necklaces on the beach. According to Jordan, at such a young age, he earned up to $500 a day and thus quickly saved $20,000 for his education. However, the only evidence of this exceptional youthful entrepreneurial talent is Belfort's own word. After dropping out of college, Belfort was determined to succeed in life. Initially, Jordan got a job at a large meat company, where he learned about sourcing products and organizing logistics. Understanding the business model, the future Wolf started his own venture selling meat and seafood. He borrowed a lot of money and began aggressively capturing the market, from private clients and restaurants to other establishments needing fresh meat. However, this time he did not replicate the success he had with shell necklaces on the beach. Money was scarce, the product spoiled, and constant cash flow problems became the norm. 99% of people would have closed the business in such a situation, but Belfort was not easily discouraged. He convinced suppliers to give him a grace period and rented 26 trucks for even more aggressive market capture. After these operations, the company found itself in even greater debt, but Belfort had nerves of steel and was not overly concerned. Meat suppliers expected payments at the end of the month, while Jordan received money from sales daily. Essentially, Belfort received interest-free credit from suppliers in the form of products, and then told these suppliers that they could only get their money back if they continued supplying him on credit. Otherwise, both Belfort's company and the suppliers would go under. Of course, this couldn't go on for long, and Belfort's company eventually went bankrupt. Whether Jordan dragged any of his suppliers down with him remains unknown. Belfort decided to turn over a less than glamorous page of his biography and declared bankruptcy. Afterward, he got a job at the brokerage firm L.F. Rothschild. Incidentally, this company has no relation to the famous Rothschild family. It was founded by a namesake back in 1899. Ironically, almost immediately after Belfort joined, the firm closed down, just short of its anniversary. As bizarre as Belfort's first day at work seemed in the movie, it was actually like that in real life. His supervisor disdainfully explained Belfort's duties, specifically cold calling potential clients and passing the phone to his boss when a client showed interest. Soon, the most successful broker at the firm, Mark Hanna, approached to personally speak with the newcomer who had boldly tried to sell stocks during his interview to make an impression. Belfort immediately impressed Mark, who took the young star out to lunch at a luxurious restaurant. During the meal, he mentioned that he didn't drink. And according to Belfort, Hannah and the waiter looked at him as if he had confessed to some perversion. Hannah then took a hit of a white substance and revealed to Belfort the real secrets of their tough job.
Make clients money at the same time, it's advantageous to everyone, correct?
No.
According to Jordan, this conversation drastically changed his lifestyle, leading him to indulge in vices with prostitutes and strong substances every single day. Jordan quickly integrated into the rowdy team and soon obtained his broker's license. His first day as a full-fledged broker coincided with Black Monday, when the Dow Jones Index dropped by a record 22.6%. Afterward, LF Rothschild closed down, and Belfort had to move through several companies. Jordan navigated through relatively reputable firms until he ended up at the shady Investor Center, which dealt in penny stocks, as depicted in the film. In the book that the film is based on, Belfort elaborates on his wild parties, the massive amounts of drugs he consumed, and how he gave his brokers opportunities to earn money. However, he pays much less attention to the methods he actually used to make money. He refers to his earning method as pump and dump in the book, while the film modestly calls this type of fraud aggressive sales. Calling Belfort's actions aggressive sales is akin to describing blatant theft from the Treasury as inefficient budget allocation. What Belfort did was a blatant violation of trading rules, and this type of fraud had been around long before Jordan. The Investor Center, where Belfort ended up, was a so-called boiler room. This term originated in the United States in the late 1960s. Boiler rooms were typically located in basement or boiler room spaces of office buildings, where a large number of hungry brokers were packed into cold call potential victims. Aggressive sales scripts were used on clients with phrases like, "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity," or "You can't afford to miss this." At that time, the activities of such small boiler rooms were poorly regulated. The companies offered to clients over the phone were penny stocks. Today, you can buy almost any stock with a few taps on a smartphone, but back then it had to be done through a broker. Often, the broker would call the client to suggest a good deal on buying or selling a stock because only the broker knew the current price of the security. An ordinary person could learn this at best the next day from newspapers, and if it was a penny stock, it wouldn't be in the newspapers at all. Since the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission did not closely monitor the cheap stock market at that time, boiler room owners colluded with the owners of cheap companies. The boiler room owner would buy up almost all the shares of a small company at a low price. Once control over all the shares was achieved, brokers were instructed to sell these shares to all clients over the phone, fabricating various enticing stories. Since almost all the shares were with the boiler room owner, there were very few in circulation, causing the price to skyrocket. For clients who doubted, a self-fulfilling prophecy would occur. The broker called the client on Monday and offered a great company at 15 cents, predicting it would soon be worth several dollars. The client would hesitate, but the pumping phase had begun, and by Thursday, the company was already worth 40 cents. The broker would call the client again, saying it's the last chance to get in on the action and get rich. Unable to resist the temptation, the client would invest their savings in the stock. Then the third phase began. The boiler room owner started taking profits by dumping all their shares of the worthless company, making huge money. Ideally, there should only be sell orders from the boiler room owner in the market. When real investors realized the stocks were plummeting down, the boiler room owner did everything possible to prevent them from selling their assets. It reached the point of absurdity, where brokers were forbidden from answering clients' calls. Once all positions were sold off, the boiler room brokers moved on to a new company. And since demand for the old company was created only by the boiler room itself, the stock price instantly plummeted, leaving hapless investors with massive losses. Naturally, the boiler room owner didn't register the shares in his own name but used straw men, whom DiCaprio refers to in the film as rat holes,
Now, a rat hole is a friend, like Brad here, who held stock in his name from me.
Investors Center, the company Belfort joined as a broker, was just such a boiler room. This shady company was soon shut down after Jordan joined, but he liked the scheme so much that he decided to replicate it, not as a regular broker, but as a boiler room owner. Together with Danny Porish and Kenneth Green, he founded Stratton Oakmont. Incidentally, his meeting with Danny Porish didn't happen the way it was shown in the film. Before making millions, Belfort often took the bus to work. His neighbor, Nancy Porish, used to ride the bus with him. When she found out how much money Belfort was making, she insisted that her husband, who was also her cousin, speak with him. The very next day, Danny Porish quit his job and also became a broker. Initially, Belfort recruited staff from his former meat company employees, which is referenced in the film.
So I recruited some of my hometown boys. Sea Otter, who sold meat and weed.
As the company expanded, Jordan hired former brokers from Aleph Rothschild. Interestingly, even Mark Hanna eventually joined Stratton Oakmont, though this amusing detail isn't mentioned in the movie. At first, Belfort and his gang of brokers operated using the classic boiler room system. Step 1. Buy up cheap companies through straw men. Step 2. Drive up the price on the stock exchange using the boiler room brokers. Step 3. Quickly dump all the shares, and so on endlessly. Belfort, however, was smarter than the owners of Investor Center. Besides these manipulations, his brokers also sold other stocks that Belfort wasn't associated with. Furthermore, Belfort perfected the scam by inventing what he called the Kodak sales system, to sell stocks not just to the poor, but also to the wealthy. If brokers directly offered cheap stocks to wealthy individuals, they would often hang up. However, if they first offered shares of a reputable company like Kodak as bait, worked with the client and let them earn a 5% profit, then after the client took the bait, they could casually suggest a riskier investment that could bring a 500% return in a month. The broker would pretend to have inside information on this company and wanted to share it with a valuable client. Stratton Oakmont grew, and Belfort and his company moved into a business center. Today, the parking lot of that building has ordinary cars, but in the 90s, only Ferraris and Porsches were parked there, even though the neighborhood was not affluent. People who flocked to Stratton Oakmont dreamed of working on Wall Street, despite not even theoretically being able to pass an interview there. This was Belfort's philosophy. It was cheaper and easier to train a money-hungry novice than to work with university graduates. Moreover, an educated person might understand the company's underhanded dealings and the true nature of their schemes. Soon, Belfort's company caught the attention of regulatory authorities. He made a deal paying a fine that was minor compared to his turnover. However, why other fraudsters were imprisoned while Jordan managed to smooth things over with the FBI and SEC remaining free is not entirely clear. In his book, Belfort describes in detail his interactions with a certain Richard Bowe, who was very close to the top of the New York Mafia and had a reputation as someone who could solve almost any problem. It seems that this Bowe helped negotiate with the authorities, resulting in Belfort's company receiving only a paltry fine of a few $1,000,000. Additionally, Belfort somehow managed to install wiretaps in the offices of several FBI agents, allowing him to know the intentions of his opponents in advance. In his book, Belfort claims that the mysterious Richard Bowe had nothing to do with the wiretap operation and even advised against it. The incorruptible FBI agent depicted in the film also existed in real life. In reality, the incorruptible FBI agent was named Greg Coleman. When Belfort was selling meat, Coleman obtained his broker's license and explored the financial markets. However, he soon encountered Black Monday, the market crash of 1987. After the crash, Coleman joined the FBI, focusing on cases involving financial fraud. By 1992, at just 30 years old, Coleman was leading a new investigative unit dedicated to financial crimes involving stocks. The Belfort case was among the first assigned to him, but Jordan Belfort was far from the only criminal Coleman pursued. Contrary to what's portrayed in the film, Coleman's work was devoid of personal motives. The scene with lobsters, where Jordan allegedly tried to bribe the agent on a yacht, never actually occurred. Everyone who knew Belfort described him not only as a top-notch salesman, but also as a person who energized everyone around him.
And the last thing I want to say is that Stratton Oakmont is part of everybody here. Not me, not Kenny, not a couple of partners. It's made up of everybody here. You guys are part of it. You built it. And without you, it doesn't run. And if we all stick together, next year at this time we'll be double the size. And, well, we already are the most powerful firm, but we'll be a legend on Wall Street, guys. And that's our goal. All right? That's what we're looking for.
Even in all his public appearances after serving his sentence, Belfort continues to make such an impression. Despite his immoral lifestyle, Belfort was not greedy. He generously tipped both service staff and prostitutes. Employees at his company did indeed earn substantial incomes if they excelled in their job. For instance, a former carpet salesman who joined Stratton Oakmont earned $100,000 in his first month and $1 million in his first year. To boost morale, Belfort held morning meetings every day. Even the most successful brokers, who made substantial commissions from their deals, sometimes grappled with the ethical implications of pushing unprofitable investments on clients. These meetings helped to soothe the employees' consciences and keep them motivated. According to Belfort, the wild parties depicted in the film were less extreme than in reality. In numerous interviews, he stated that their actual exploits were even more outrageous than what Scorsese portrayed on screen. For example, Belfort dedicated an entire chapter of his book to their Vegas adventures, which were only briefly covered in the film. The only factor that helped contain the madness was Jordan's father, who was genuinely known as Mad Max. In addition to handling the firm's accounting, Max Belfort acted as a sort of overseer. His influence was crucial in keeping Stratton Oakmont afloat for as long as it did. By 1993, Belfort had become fully convinced of his invincibility and decided it was time to take things to the next level. He orchestrated the scandalous IPO of Steve Madden's shoes. Watching the film, one might get the impression that Steve Madden's company was highly successful and that Steve Madden himself was an unrecognized fashion genius. In reality, at the time of the IPO, Steve had only one store. This is comparable to listing a small basement workshop with two seamstresses working in shifts on the stock exchange alongside giants like Microsoft and Apple. Yes, the business was real and it did make some money, but the scale was entirely different. In preparation for this scheme, Jordan preemptively bought nearly the entire company from Steve for $500,000. Legally, Jordan was not allowed to own such a large percentage of a company's stock that he was taking public, so he used a familiar tactic, a straw man. In this case, the so-called rat hole was Steve Madden himself. Steve was portrayed as a genius who created new trends, but in reality he was just a nominal director. The shoe company was intended to be another pump-and-dump operation, inflated in value and then sold off at its peak. However, Belfort found himself under the watchful eye of an incorruptible FBI agent. Feeling the heat, Jordan decided to sell his stake in Stratton Oakmont, passing control of the brokerage firm to his partner, Donnie Brasco. But Jordan wasn't one to sit still. He had pumped so much money into Steve Madden's IPO and generated such a frenzy around the company that simply cashing out felt like a waste. With a controlling stake in hand, Belfort turned his attention to the shoe business. Under his direction, the shoe company rapidly expanded, opening around 18 retail stores and reaching $45 million in sales. With this success, Steve Madden grew dissatisfied with his role as a straw man, leading to a power struggle between him and Belfort. However, after leaving Stratton Oakmont, Jordan's influence over Steve was limited. He had left Danny in charge of the brokerage, but Danny struggled with leadership. Jordan detailed in his book how Danny's morning meetings were a disaster, where instead of boosting morale, he would awkwardly try to figure out which brokers might be gay. Compounding these issues was the increasing pressure from regulatory authorities, which eventually led to the shutdown of Stratton Oakmont in 1996. This closure further strained Belfort's relationship with Steve Madden. Jordan had previously used Stratton Oakmont to artificially prop up the stock price of Steve Madden's shoes, a leverage he no longer had. Jordan's business empire was slowly beginning to crumble, but the one thing that remained constant for Belfort was his crazy lifestyle. He continued to abuse prescription drugs and illegal substances, leading to several notorious incidents depicted in the film, such as the car crash in his sports car and the sinking of the yacht Nadine. Trouble also began to brew in the Wolf's personal life. His wife grew tired of enduring Belfort's drunken escapades. Several times, Jordan found himself in the police station due to altercations with his wife, and he eventually agreed to undergo rehabilitation. After rehab, it seemed like Jordan was on the mend. However, in 1998, FBI agents showed up at his home and arrested him on charges of fraud and money laundering. Unlike in the movie, where Belfort is caught by chance, his downfall in reality had been years in the making. In the film, Belfort is caught because a certain Swiss banker was found laundering money not only for Belfort, but also for a drug cartel. In reality, authorities had been building up a case against Belfort for years before this. Despite years of hard work, the relentless Agent Coleman had amassed substantial evidence of Belfort's financial misconduct, but hesitated to take action. He realized that nailing Belfort for financial manipulation would be tough. If Belfort had been dealing in weapons or drugs, it would have been straightforward, but he was selling stocks, mostly legally. How could he pinpoint where the crime occurred versus a simple bad market turn for the client? And even if he could, proving it in court against Belfort's top-tier lawyers was a whole other challenge. So, Coleman decided to shift strategies and focus on tax evasion. His approach was straightforward: follow the money. With tens of thousands of financial records in front of him, Coleman sought to track down who ultimately benefited. That's when he stumbled upon the name Alvin Abrams. Abrams had once been Belfort's mentor and later became his partner in crime. Coleman's investigation into Abrams' bank records quickly revealed something suspicious. On Monday, Abrams would withdraw $9,500 from his account. On Tuesday, $9,600. On Wednesday, $9,700, and so on, day after day for several months. In total, this amounted to $2.3 million. Coleman immediately understood what was happening. By then, anti-money laundering laws were already in place, requiring any cash transaction over $10,000 to be reported to the IRS. If the money was legitimate, there was no problem. But for criminals, this law became a huge headache. Coleman arrested Abrams along with his secretary and seized all their accounting records. Facing the real prospect of prison time, they were pressured into cooperating with the investigation and revealing the purpose behind the cash withdrawals. The scheme was structured as follows. Abrams managed one of Belfort's shell companies and was deeply involved in the pump and dump operations we've already discussed. However, the profit distribution was particularly intriguing. Out of every $1 million earned, $250,000 went to Abrams, another $250,000 to Belfort, and the remaining $500,000 was set aside for taxes. Agent Coleman often remarked that Belfort would have been the perfect criminal if it weren't for his drug addictions. He was intelligent, charismatic, disciplined, and creative, the most dangerous traits in a con artist. But even he had a weakness. Much like the cartels, too much money with nowhere to spend it without attracting unwanted attention. Coleman, like a bloodhound, caught the scent. At that time, Belfort embarked on a global tour. Knowing that he was laundering money through shell companies, Agent Coleman decided to closely monitor this suspicious journey, particularly through well-known offshore zones. It was discovered that Belfort was linked to numerous offshore companies and bank accounts in Geneva, Liechtenstein, the Virgin Islands, and several South American countries. These accounts avoided taxes, declarations, and any bureaucratic oversight. By 1994, although Belfort was no longer officially associated with Stratton Oakmont, profits continued to flow through intricate schemes into these offshore havens. Coleman continued to investigate this lead and discovered that Todd Garrett's wife, who was a simple housewife, was investing hundreds of thousands of dollars annually in foreign stocks and was originally from Switzerland. With this evidence, Coleman arrested Garrett and his wife and charged them with various offenses. In the film, Garrett is portrayed as a tough character who doesn't betray Belfort. However, in reality, he immediately cooperated, disclosing documents, dates, and accounts to protect himself and his wife. It was revealed that Belfort had been moving cash to Swiss banks for years, involving Garrett's relatives, who were Swiss citizens. After 6 years of investigation, Agent Coleman had amassed sufficient evidence to arrest Belfort. Facing up to 30 years in prison, Belfort agreed to cooperate fully, implicating nearly all of his partners to reduce his sentence. While The Wolf of Wall Street focuses primarily on Belfort, he wasn't the FBI's only target. After his arrest, Agent Coleman aimed to capture several other significant criminals. On the first day, Belfort wore a wire. He went to a restaurant with a friend. Coleman, listening from a nearby car, overheard their conversation. Here's what he heard. "Hey, remember when we used to pull off schemes?" Belfort's friend hesitated, then said he didn't recall anything of the sort. Belfort pressed with more provocative questions, but the friend continued to deny any involvement, suggesting Belfort should take a break and clear his head. As soon as the meeting ended, Belfort's associate left the restaurant, called his buddy and said, "You won't believe it. I just met with Jordan, and he handed me a napkin saying, 'Don't set yourself up, I'm wired.'" Unbeknownst to Belfort's friend, the person he called was already working with the FBI. That same day, Agent Coleman visited Belfort and told him that he could immediately void his plea deal and sentence him to the full 27 years in prison. After that, Belfort agreed to fully cooperate, implicating everyone he could. The former Wolf of Wall Street served just 22 months in prison, although calling it a prison is a bit of a stretch, as the facility featured a large library, a comfortable reading room, and even a tennis court. During this time, Belfort met actor Tommy Chong, who suggested writing 2 autobiographical books, The Wolf of Wall Street and Catching the Wolf of Wall Street, which later inspired the film. Today, Belfort is a sought-after speaker and claims to earn even more than he did during his financial schemes. Thank you for watching the video to the end. I hope you had a good time. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You'll discover plenty of other captivating videos waiting for you there.